evening and welcome to the Town of Shelburne Development Review Board meeting of Wednesday, December 4th, 2013. Meeting to order. The first item on the agenda is public comment period. If there's anybody here to speak to an issue that is not on the agenda this evening, now's your chance. Unseen. We'll move to item 3, which is a design review application, DR 1323 Gillian Sr. for the Common Deer at 5224 Shelburne Road, which is for a new sign. Swear people in. If you're going to speak to this, I hereby swear or affirm, tell the truth, nothing but the truth, and change it to the truth of perjury.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Annie?
This is a design review application for a replacement of a panel on an existing freestanding sign in the village design review district, as well as a facade sign on the building. The HPDRC recommended the approval of this at their November 21st meeting. However, one slight issue. This can still be approved as a design review. However, there is an existing variance that limits variance granted in 1983 for the existing freestanding sign.
Hang on a second, Annie. Hey, David, if you guys are going to speak, could you go out in the hallway, please? Because it comes over on the TV and nobody can hear. Thank you. I'm sorry, Annie.
Oh, that's okay. There's a variance granted in 1983 for the freestanding sign to allow it to be 10 square feet. The limit at that time was 4. The limit is currently 16 square feet, so the variance is no longer needed. There's a condition in the variance that limits the facade signs of the building to the name and date of the house, so it says no additional facade signs. So in order to issue a permit for that, I would advise that the applicant relinquish that variance. Freestanding sign is an existing non-conforming sign because it is in the right-of-way. However, the variance has no bearing on that. It's only for the size of the sign panel. But as far as approving it for the design purposes, I think the board is free to do that. The variance would just need to be relinquished before the permit for the facade sign can be issued.
Andy, can you just tell me what your relinquishing a variance actually means and what an applicant has to do?
I advised the applicant to write a letter just saying the variance is no longer needed. And then from that point on, it doesn't exist.
Okay.
And that's my landlord. So I think she just has to understand.
Could you identify yourself just so people on the TV know who you are?
I'm sorry, I'm Sharon Beal, owner of Common Deer.
Okay.
I'm renting from Gillian Sr., who owns this house. And I think she has to just understand more about relinquishing the understanding of what does it mean to relinquish the variance that she has or whatever, the approval she has.
That's fine.
I'm very sorry.
I have a mic up there.
I didn't know I was supposed to talk.
Either way,
Am I supposed to stand? I don't know. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Okay, so we have a sign on the signboard out front. And so that's what I'm asking for tonight. And then I was asking for another sign to go on the front, but I guess that Annie says there's a couple problems with doing that, so I'm not sure.
I think we can get you to the point where the sign on the building is okay.
That would be great, because it would be very helpful to my business, especially in this Christmas holiday.
Am I correct in saying that as that?
That's how I
your
see it. I think because this is strictly a design review application,
right.
You can go ahead and approve it, and we can take care of the other stuff administratively.
Right, that's just a matter of record if the variance is released.
Okay, so I just have to have my landlord contact you and then work that out? Okay,
So
thank you.
So what kind of sign is going on the house? Did I miss that?
On the
Is it a big sign, little sign? Let's take a look. Sorry.
There should be a picture that I put with,
Oh, there it is.
This one?
Common Deer?
yeah,
Okay.
yes.
It's size file dog in there. 48 by 12.
And that actual sign, I have a smaller version of it, if that's what you'd rather me put there. I have a smaller version of that, too.
Well, it meets, theoretically, it meets the ordinance, and a lot of times we kind of leave that to the design review, or historic preservation in that district.
They were happy with it, so I mean, I showed them exactly what it was with the pictures and everything.
They did actually recommend that the sign hang from porch.
Yeah.
Hang on the facade, which we don't have permission, the town does not have permission for in the bylaws. And so their second recommendation was that that wasn't possible, and so we go with the facade sign.
Is that specifically excluded to hang a sign from a building like that? Or?
No, there just aren't provisions for it. There's specific provisions allowing for facade, freestanding, and in certain cases projecting. There is nothing.
Yeah, it's kind of unique. Okay. Any other comments from board members, questions?
I just have a question. Is this a historic building? Is it considered a historic building?
I believe so. I'm not sure. It's not my building, so but I believe so. Yeah.
Do you know if there are any guidelines for attaching a sign to an historic building, like things you might have to do to attach it without, causing, damage to the mortar or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, that's something that, we have restored buildings before, my husband and I, so I mean, if anything that, I would make sure that anything that was done the right way, because the building is a gorgeous building, so I would, definitely keep within the guidelines, whatever. Thank you.
Is there anybody here from the public to speak to this application? Well, would somebody like to entertain a motion for approval on this?
I'll make a motion to approve design review application DR 13-23 of Gillian Senior, Commandeer.
Second.
Seconded by Mark. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, do we have to announce the fact that all these were continued because they were warned in? These, continued applications?
Quickly, yeah.
Okay. So quickly,
Sharon, you can just leave that on.
technical difficulties.
So do I just have my landlord contact you about everything then?
Yeah. Okay. Give me something tomorrow.
Thank you very much.
So, item number 4 on the agenda, application by Gary and Paula Warner for an amendment to the Rivercrest final plan. They have requested a continuance to December 18, 2013. We need to have somebody move to continue this, and this needs to be approved. So, somebody like to do that?
I'll move to approve, to move application, or to continue application SUB 01-07R7 to December 18th.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The next item on the agenda, item 5, is an application SUB 0107R8 by Robert Thomas for an amendment to the Rivercrest final plan. They have requested a continuance to December 18th as well. I will make a motion to continue that to December 18, 2013.
Second.
Favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Item 6, application A13-19, an appeal by Andrew Richardson of a notice of violation issued for construction of a structure without a zoning permit and several other items. They have requested this be continued to the 18th of December. Somebody like to make a motion to move that ahead?
Move to continue to the next meeting on the 18th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that one carries. And item number 7, application SUV 92-7R4, which is a continuance from our previous meeting. It's an application by Christoph and Alice Lisserod for a preliminary plan approval to re-subdivide 2 lots located off Thompson Road into 5 residential lots. The parent parcel at 539 Irish Hill Road is located in the residential district. That's it. I need to swear you folks in. If you want to speak to this, I hereby swear affirm to tell the truth and nothing but the truth, and the pains and penalties of perjury. Annie, you're still under oath.
This application was continued from the November 20th meeting to allow the applicant's time to reconfigure lot 1, lot 1A, and lot 2, and lot 2A in a manner that would result in each lot having the required 100 feet of frontage along Thompson Road. The board also requested a legal opinion from the town attorney as to whether section 1980.1 provided an exemption from residential district lot frontage requirements for lots with no road frontage. Town attorney has provided a legal opinion which indicates that section 1980.1 and section 1920 in the town subdivision regulations do provide exemptions from the bylaw lot frontage requirements and do not prohibit the creation of a lot without road frontage. The board also requested that the applicants adjust the preliminary plat to show the proposed no-cut zone and provide a list of waivers desired from the requirements of the subdivision regulations. The board indicated at the November 20th meeting that it would be inclined to grant a waiver for a landscaping plan. And documents from the town departments or agencies that the subdivider's plans have been reviewed and deemed acceptable are also something the board requested. And then noted they would accept as part of final plan application. And I believe the applicants are here with an updated version of the plan.
Yeah, it's here.
Okay.
It does not, the plat does not show the no-cut zone. I just realized that, I knew that was, but I figured that was for the final. But it does show the additional, now the lots are each 100 feet. They each have 100 feet of road frontage. And that was the only change that was made. May I give it to you to look at? Or this is the only copy I have, so.
I'll give it back.
If you want to pass it.
So just to clarify, the only change is the lot frontage.
Yes, that was the only, yeah.
So
Yeah.
lot 2A is slightly smaller than all the other lots became.
Christoph can speak to
The
this.
frontage was increased, but not by a lot, just a few feet. So you can't really tell the difference on that plan because it's a very small difference, but it looks the same, but it's slightly different.
Yeah, well, that's that. Yeah, we had a big question about can you have this land off by, I suppose the town attorney says you can, as long as this is a permanent easement or minimum 20 feet, and more 50 feet size. That's my recollection.
This doesn't have any dimensions on it.
Are you looking for the dimensions? or-
Yep, I see that.
Oh, okay.
I see that. I didn't see the table. This is different from the drawing we saw last time.
So Mark, do you mind if I ask you if you got the emails that I sent out today?
Yeah, we did. Hang on one second.
I don't know if you got them.
Just, we did get them, yes.
Mark
Did
said
you
he
get
didn't get them.
it? Mark Brooks, okay.
Here, you can read them.
Do you folks have anything else you'd like to add to this application other than that?
I don't think at this point,
All right.
we know what the next steps are, we have to tweak it all, right?
Hit everything on the checklist for the application, Annie?
Yep, except for just the only thing that we're missing was some of the feedback from the town departments, which you had indicated last meeting would be acceptable as coming in with the final application.
Yeah, I know civil engineering is
That's
going to
plenty,
have
yeah.
to.
We're meeting with the water department and the fire department as well to make sure their requirements fit, but so far, I think,
That's what CEA said.
yeah.
Yeah,
You still contemplating doing municipal water up there? Or?
Possibly, yeah, that's now a possibility, depending on what the water system can handle. I guess that's what I understood, that it's possible.
Okay. All right. Discussion by the board? I'm sorry, Annie, you have something?
Oh, no, basically, there will be a decision to be signed, findings for the preliminary plan for this. Is there anything that you would like included as far as conditions or suggestions for the final plan, other than the no-cut zone and the department feedback?
Well, let's
Or do you want to
bring it
discuss?
to discussion and see if anything else crops up. How's that? Okay, Bill, you had something you wanted to say?
Well, Mark, I know you haven't been here for all the discussion about this or got the emails today. Our city attorney has ruled that 1980.1 allows us to create a lot in the residential district with no road frontage. I disagree with that opinion. I think it's being misapplied. And if you look at section 430.1 in an ordinance, it clearly says that a residential district requires a minimum of 100-foot lot frontage, and there's even a provision where we can reduce that lot frontage if a lot is on a curve or a cul-de-sac. But there are no other provisions in section 430 that says we can reduce lot frontage down to 0, which is essentially what's happening in this case. So my opinion is 1980.1 is being misapplied, and I don't see any criteria in 19.80.1 that says what we could use to judge if we were going to use that criteria to create a lot that doesn't have road frontage. And so I don't feel that the board has unfettered discretion here, and I think you need to follow the design guidelines of the district, which says that we should be creating walkable communities with road frontage in a residential district.
But the town attorney said it's
The town attorney has basically said
his interpretation.
we can use 1980.1 to create a lot that has no road frontage. Doesn't say that we have to.
Let's do this. Do you have the documents in front of you that came from the attorney?
Yeah,
Um,
I can paraphrase what he said, or I can read it verbatim.
You can do that, or we can adjourn for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. We can let Mark read through it. Or we can just let Mark read through it, give him a chance to digest it. And then we'll see what the feeling of the rest of the board members are with that, how they are with that interpretation. Okay? Does that work for you? You all set with that? Okay, so we're going to adjourn for 5 minutes. Thank you.
It's in the field.
Okay, welcome back. This reconvening Shelburne Development Review Board meeting. We're on item number 7. So, anyways, you don't have anything else to say. Is there any other questions the board members have of the applicant? Items they would like to discuss regarding this application?
The only question I have is, have you tried to develop this out by giving lot frontage to all your building lots?
I'm sorry.
Have you tried to develop out your parcel by having lot frontage for each lot? Road frontage, I'm sorry, for each lot.
Well, because we heard back from the town attorney that it was fine the way it was, we just proceeded by increasing the lot frontage on those 4 lots. So, no, the answer is no, we didn't try to make a funky, I don't know if there would be enough frontage to do that, actually.
I don't believe
Give
there's
it-
enough frontage.
No, there wouldn't be. And one point that I think that should be kept in considered is that this abuts almost 60 acres of land that's now with the Vermont Land Trust. And this is land that's very close to the town center. And I know that the town wanted to increase density close to the center of town versus having, large lots with a house on each. And so I think this is really in keeping with that. And I understand what you're saying about not enough frontage, but it seems still to have that neighborhoody feeling. And out your back door, you've got beavers and a lovely big pond and all sorts of things. So to me, that is the trade-off.
Well, I think the town attorney said that for 1980.1 allows us to create a no road frontage lot. I wouldn't characterize that as being fine because there are several characteristics of the residential ordinance that clearly say a minimum road frontage requirement. Basically, he's ruled that 1980.1 will allow us to bypass that if we choose to. For me, the argument is that Rivercrest was built across the street, and the O'Briens put a lot of money in infrastructure, in building roads, in putting in sewers, drainage to create a neighborhood, because that's the way the ordinance says. And to me, when we allow one applicant not to do it and make other applicants required to spend a lot more money on roads, and we're not really enforcing the ordinance fairly.
But this seems a very different type of development than across the road.
Well, that's an
where
interesting
25
point, because
houses
it's right across the street, and it's the exact same residential district. And the O'Briens met the residential criteria, and this one doesn't seem to meet the residential criteria, in my opinion. Certainly, I'm not arguing in any way that you can't build out your property. As far as I'm concerned, you can build out to the maximum density allowed. It's more the criteria for the residential district that I'm concerned about.
Any other board members, questions of the applicant, items they'd like to discuss? Well, I guess that brings us to, we can put this to a vote and see where it goes. Anybody like to make a motion to approve this?
I make a motion to approve SUB 92-7R4 preliminary plan per the staff memo.
Are there any other conditions that anybody wants to add to this? Well, we have a chance. I think we covered that previously. You have to bring the comments by the various departments that are missing from the preliminary application. Okay. All right.
Are you interested in seeing both sets of plans? I believe that they have theirs just flat. I mean, everything is essentially the same on the plans we saw last week. It's just a lot frontage.
I'm fine. I saw that table, and this is preliminary. It's not final, so if it's it's not shown that way on the plat, we'll have an issue with it. Anyways, would anybody like to second that motion?
I'll second.
All right, all those in favor?
Discussion, please.
Okay.
You know, I asked a couple other questions this afternoon that never got answered. One of them was, are we creating a non-conforming lot by creating a lot with no road frontage? Because to me, we're not building a lot that meets the dimensional requirements. And having the DRB create a non-conforming lot to me is a major issue. And then there's been no discussion really about the goals of a residential district, and I think we should be taking them into account. And our attorney never answered those questions. I don't know if my email was forwarded to him that I sent to you around noon this afternoon.
I forwarded the first one, and we got, and the second, and the response from the second was that the exception for the cul-de-sacs and the curved roads did not apply to this, specifically for lots with less than the required frontage, not zero frontage, two different things. And his response, going back to the first response, was that 1980.1 did allow the development review board using the criteria provided, which is that it's served by an easement or a right-of-way of 20 feet. That is the criteria, and we're speaking of there's a lack of criteria. That was the opinion, that is the criteria. And if that is the case, then that 1980.1 allows a bypass of the frontage requirement. So the lot is not a non-conforming lot.
The lot is, well, he didn't say anything about a conforming lot in his email. I didn't read anything about that.
Okay, well, that's my opinion. It's not a non-conforming lot because it applies to section 1980.1. That provision is there to allow for this type of lot to be created at the discretion of the development review board.
So if this lot were to come before us for another project, even though it has no road frontage, we would consider this a conforming lot? That's based.
I'm not understanding your question.
If this-
The lot already existed?
If this lot comes back before us down the road, even though it has no road frontage and doesn't meet the dimensional requirements for the district, you would say it's a conforming lot?
I think the intention here is, it is a conforming lot if it's served by an easement.
Permanent easement and
A
minimum
permanent
of 20
easement,
feet.
Minimum of 20 or 25 feet.
But it doesn't meet the road frontage requirements, which is the
But that-
dimensional characteristic of the
But
district.
Yes,
section
it-
1980.1 is explicitly exempting it from the
Yeah.
frontage requirements in either or.
It's pretty
Either
straightforward when I
It
read
has
it.
to be 100 feet, or it has to be served by an easement or right-of-way of 20 feet.
I agree with that interpretation. I mean, it's an either-or situation. Takes the dimensional requirement out if you have an easement.
It's very similar to the section, I'm not going to be able to quote the number off the top of my head, that's exception to setbacks, which was there's a specific structural setback requirement in each district, and there's an exception section that says specifically for driveways and several other items are exempted from that, and you can only have to meet a 5-foot setback. So they don't meet the required setback of the district, but because there's another provision that supersedes that, they are still conforming.
Any other questions, discussion?
No.
So, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion carries. Okay. So the next item on the agenda is item number 8. An application, let's get to the agenda. SUB 1303. Application by Lake Champlain Waldorf School for a sketch plan approval for modifications to an existing PUD. The proposal includes, in addition to the existing school building, access and circulation improvements, the relocation of an existing garage, shed, and several other minor site plan adjustments. The property is located at 359 through the lane and is located in the residential district. swear anybody in who's going to speak to this application. David, you and your assistant. I hereby swear affirm to tell the truth, nothing but the truth under the pains and penalties of perjury.
I do.
You, Annie, you're still under oath.
This particular property was originally approved as a PUD in 1989. This was amended in 1997. At the time of the 97 amendment, a master plan for the site was approved. And at that time, for the 97 approval, the property was located in the commercial industrial zoning district, which is no longer in existence. Both the building and parking areas met the requirements for that district at that time, with the exception of parking areas in the front and side yard setbacks. The no parking area within the periphery buffer was waived as part of the original approval in 1989. In other words, the site was conforming to the district requirements and the PUD requirements at the time. The property is now located in the residential zoning district, and commercial PUDs are not allowed in this district, which makes the property a non-conforming lot. The applicant is entitled to any and all improvements depicted in the master plan approved in 97. However, any new development and past modifications that are not consistent with the 97 approval are subject to review under current zoning bylaws per the non-conforming lot section 1920.3C. Staff recommendation is that the board review this proposal under section 1930, which are the general PUD standards, and section 400, which are the residential district requirements. An alternative option that the applicant may want to consider is adding a dwelling unit to the campus, so the proposal could be reviewed as a mixed-use PUD, which are allowed in the residential district. Staff also recommends that the board require that the applicant apply for conditional use approval for one of the following: either expansion of the existing use, which is a public and private school certified by the Vermont Department of Education, or an addition of an accessory use, which would be an auditorium, and would fall under multiple uses when one or more of the uses is the conditional use. And that would pertain specifically to the proposed expansion of the use, which would be the proposed addition of the auditorium. Third staff recommendation is that the board continue this application and request that the applicant provide the following information as part of a follow-up and a continuing of the sketch plan, which would be a list of structures that require review, as in not just the addition of existing structures that are not permitted, don't conform to the master plan, and also to get clarification from the applicant how they wish to proceed, whether they're applying under the general PUD standards and current residential district requirements, or that they would like to do the option of a mixed-use PUD.
Okay.
And I have one other item that David will probably speak to. Is in the staff report, it notes that one of the primary structures, which is the kindergarten building, does not meet the residential district setback requirements. The 100-foot PUD periphery buffer, and that has been remeasured. It is 100.2 feet back from the property line.
Okay. Thank you, Annie. David?
Very good. With the chair's permission, perhaps I'll give you a little bit of overview in regards to this particular property. This plan, taken from the Vermont Environmental Interest Locator, is an orthophoto there where north is to the right, and this is Harbor Road. This is the existing town wastewater treatment facility, the ball fields out on the east side, the highway department. And in order to access the property, you actually drive through what's called Turtle Lane to ultimately get to the campus site itself. This particular campus site is adjacent or lies adjacent to the Little Platte River, and hence there are a number of other environmental resource areas around the property. What I'm going to do is show you a couple of plans that Annie has referenced in her staff report, which reflects some of the historical characterizations or proposals for the property. But before we do that, We'll show you the site plan that was submitted, but with an ortho photo. So again, north is to the right. So before we were out here at Harbor Road and coming down Turtle Lane past the municipal facilities and ultimately into the campus area. And points that I'd like you to at least keep in mind is that this arch nature of the buildings that have been constructed to date. I'll go back to the 1989 plan that Annie had referenced. These plans are upside down for a reason, because we still want to show you that north is to the right. Back in the day, they got it backwards. So now we're inheriting this and trying to correct the issues. But nonetheless, this particular master plan of 1989 showed generally a portion of that arced area. Future buildings, primarily associated with the high school and an auditorium, and if I can read upside down without my glasses, another building. So, and the kindergarten here. So again, you drive in from Turtle Lane, parking, a little bit of a cul-de-sac, and this arch nature as far as what was there. So Annie's report also identified a update to the town as far as the master plan at that point in time. And again, here we point out the arch nature. This is actually what was constructed at the time with a proposed addition in 1997. This is the parking actually reconfigured from what you see both today as well as previously. But nonetheless, they had indicated that there would be a new gymnasium and auditorium, the new high school, and the kindergarten. So if we ultimately go all the way back to the first plan, which is again in your application package but without the ortho photo, we come back to, again, the arch, the kindergarten, and what's missing now is ultimately the high school, which again you will be reviewing under a separate application in a different part of town. And what this particular application does is starts to fill in the blanks as far as some of those components that were identified in the previous master plans. Here, the proposed auditorium, there's a small ordered auditorium today at this particular location, and they are now looking to basically remove a portion of the existing building and to infill or to provide proper square footage for their gathering places associated with the school activities. At this point in time, issues that came up as part of staff review was, again, that the application incorrectly identified the kindergarten setback from the property line. This particular plan shows in red, if you can crane your eyes very carefully, the 100-foot setback as it runs around. The property line actually falls off of this particular sheet, so our apologies for not depicting that in its whole. But that being said, things that are of interest or at issue as far as compliance are the accessory structures that happen to fall within the 100-foot setback. One thing this particular application seeks to do is to bring you all up to speed, or actually to get appropriate approvals for the various accessory structures that have been placed on the property over time, but without the board's approval. That being said, the ones that primarily are at issue in regards to compliance with the 100-foot perimeter green space setback is the accessory structures associated with the kindergarten. So a point of interest that was very interesting is that in Annie's staff report, she indicated that, ironically, that if you actually add a residential use to this particular property, the setbacks, required setbacks for a PUD, actually go from 100 feet down to 50 feet. Just that's the way the rules are written. That being said, the yellow line here represents what a 50-foot setback would look at. And I think the only interesting component there is that based on the existing uses of the kindergarten that do work well today, that if there was going to have to be some movement of structures out and away from the property line, that a 50-foot number would work a lot better than eliminating them wholly in order to comply with 100 feet. So before we went down that road, no pun intended, we wanted to at least talk to the board about just how good an idea that is or how bad an idea that is as far as that particular approach. With that all being said, again, the remaining issue primarily is the proposed addition and the road improvements around it to basically allow access in and around. Things that this particular plan include that will help us tie together the historical approvals dating back to 1989 is this lime yellow line. This is actually the original footprint of all of the improvements that were originally approved, still approved at the Act 250 level, were originally approved at the local level, and again, how this incremental development of the school has generally stayed, well, has stayed in compliance with that original master plan, and hence has not obviously gone to the full exposure of all the athletic fields that were originally shown or the placement of the buildings out in these particular locations. So again, trying to consolidate them in this portion of the property has been the latest ideas as far as how the school would be developed. So I've talked a lot at this point in time. I guess I'm open to further discussion with the board as far as this particular sketch plan and ideas on how best to move forward.
So the accessory buildings, the chicken coop, storage building, and whatever else there, are they on permanent concrete foundations, or are they more like a shed wood structure on pressure treated that is more, I'll call it, less temporary than a wood or than a poured foundation?
I'm going to say that most all of them are buildings that can be transported. That is very much the nature of the structures that at least I observed. The only one that I didn't look closely at is this particular structure at the far south end of the property. But generally everything else was on skids or had been brought in and appeared to be movable.
But only the structures near the kindergarten are within the setback. Is that right?
That's my understanding of how the site's been mapped and how we've applied the setback, yes. So we do have some pictures of the structures of the kindergarten if you're interested in just understanding the character. I don't know if there's really anything we can do, Annie, as far as creating waivers for structures within the perimeter setback. We've never had success before, but we're always open to ideas.
My understanding that the board does not have any flexibility with that periphery buffer.
Right.
However, there is a question as to what, under this new approval that you're seeking, what the periphery buffer would be, because as mentioned, this type of a PUD commercial, which is what a school would be, is not allowed in the residential district. So how does the board go about evaluating this? The mixed use idea simplifies it. I don't know if that's something that you're open to. I don't know if it's something the board feels is a good idea.
What was back in '89 or '98?
97 was the last
97.
one, but originally in
Yeah.
89.
Okay, so can you go back to that
Sure.
original
Yeah.
older review of what was approved?
So I'll leave these out front for reference.
Thank you. There it is.
Here it is, where again, didn't color it, but generally this is the entrance coming off of Turtle Lane, the extension of Turtle Lane, to this triangular shaped parking lot with cul-de-sac. So that actually is very close when you
Yeah.
look at what was built versus the original approval, as far as at least the impervious components.
So would the proposed auditorium just kind of still fall within the guidelines of what was established in '97?
Well, that's one thing that we superimposed is this particular perimeter approved limits of disturbance and superimposed it on this plan in the lime yellow dash line as you come around the outside. So when you look at the shape of this particular original design and approval versus that one, we tried to provide that just as a tool for background as far as, again, where this particular project stands today in relationship to the original approval. So Annie will also point out that when applicants go and change things, they change things. So that being said, another discussion point is well, what does this master plan represent? Does it fully supersede the original approval? It would appear that that would be the case. That's what I was trying to say.
I'm sorry, when was that one done?
So this would be 1997.
That's 97. When was
Yes.
that one done?
This is 1989.
89, all right.
I have a question, actually, probably for Annie. As I was reading today, and I'm not an expert at this yet, I was looking at you're calling this non-conforming, basically a non-conforming lot now, per se. And as I was reading, I don't know if I'm correct in what I was understanding, is if they were originally approved for so much square footage, which it looks like there's a lot more square footage for buildings that they didn't use, I thought
Are you talking about
the approved
limits
orig-
of just service?
the approved buildings, which they didn't build a portion of them, quite a bit of them. It almost, to me, the way I understood it was, as long as they didn't exceed the square footage, you could actually alter the location.
What they had approved, well, unfortunately in this situation now, is those specific buildings and those specific locations. What we were talking about 2 weeks ago with Shelburne Green is to avoid this situation, they're coming in thinking they want to do building envelopes for the total square footage, which is a different kind of approach. When this was approved, it wasn't approved that way. It was approved for those specific buildings and those specific locations.
Okay, because I was just wondering if what I was reading for non-conforming lots, like I said, I'm new, so I didn't know if we could grant as long as it didn't exceed the original request for square footage, if we could grant that just for that additional piece, because it's still under what was approved for square footage for buildings or, whatever.
But it's approved in the square footage in those specific locations.
Okay, so it has to be right in those exact locations. Okay.
Yes.
So Kenny, is it possible to classify this as a mixed-use PUD without actually building any residential units? Just basically change the classification to mixed use?
Oh, if they have a farm with chickens and they have a school there. That work?
So, chicken house. I thought the same thing, Jeff, as far as that's concerned.
Mixed use definition, I'd have to double check, which I can, it involves one dwelling unit.
So the next question would it be a paper dwelling unit that's shown on plan but doesn't get constructed?
Oh, right, yeah.
Because there's anytime you get an approval for a project, it doesn't mandate that you build, gives you permission to build. Then ultimately, the question comes up is, what are the minimum things that still allow you to be considered under that particular permission?
So I guess within the board, I'd like to just talk about the spirit of things. I mean, to me, it doesn't seem like they're trying to deviate from the spirit of the intent. And my thoughts are want to try to work with them so we do things that are right, but still think that makes sense and
Yeah. Stay
stay within the,
the bylaws.
yeah.
Yeah, I like the idea of, like, say, a mixed-use PUD. It seems as though there's a way we could get there.
And that takes it down to 50 feet?
That's my understanding from Annie's guidance, yes.
So right now, it's considered a non-conforming property. If we could get it to be a conforming
More
property,
conforming.
it's everybody's benefit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this property is a victim of rezoning. So that being said, Bill, I think your point's well taken, that anything we can do to bring a property more in compliance would be beneficial. I think here, the applicant would be very fortunate, or very happy, maybe, to be able to at least see some, not the full 100 feet, become a constriction in this particular location. One of the challenges that we're finding is that a lot of this area are wetlands, and that the ability to move out in this particular direction is limited. So the upland areas that are left are primarily a lot of where you see right now. And that being said, the reorganization of this area, if we can keep the pain to a minimum, I think that will be very helpful as far as, again, the program for the kindergarten around that building.
I'm not that familiar with the surrounding area, but it's obviously zoned residential. Is there actual, building possibilities on the parcels around this?
I think all of the land is owned by the Nature Conservancy. So if you can get them to loosen up,
Nicely locked
I
up.
think you get a chance.
To the east, it's all Nature Conservancy, and I'm pretty sure to the
Right.
west.
So again, going back to the plan, tilted to the right to make north to the right, similar to the application documents, all the lands around the property is surrounded by the Nature Conservancy, except on this side where it's owned by the town. So there's another partner. So as far as development potential, very, very low likelihood. I wasn't around in 1989 when they actually gave a waiver for parking within the perimeter 100-foot setback. That was in your notes, Annie, if I remember right. You wouldn't get that today, but at the time, granted, and nobody appealed, and that's at least why you see this particular characterization in that particular area. And that, I'm not sure, I don't know the background of exactly how or why that came about, but that's why we see so much of this again today, right there. Is this better?
Yeah, what year was that one?
This is 97.
Dave, could you talk a little, maybe for the board, about the difference between what's on the ground versus the original plan approval versus, was anything done besides the actual building?
Well, I think,
I guess what was implemented in that master plan? if
Okay.
anything?
no, I think that's a fair question. So this particular 1997 plan, if we put aside the old 89 plan, represents the best idea at the time, from what I understand, of how they wanted to move forward. So at that time, there was the black building was existing conditions at the time, and these particular hatched components were the proposals to move forward. When we go and take a look at the actual built-out conditions, you'll find that this particular addition was added. Going to say that this particular one was in. The kindergarten was placed in a slightly different location, but very similar. When you go and take a look at that and the relationship here, this one actually ended up being a little bit behind. But as far as the other major components that were not executed, it again would be the gymnasium and the auditorium as well as the high school. They did show a new blacktop area. That's ultimately what became the basketball court here. In the meantime, they put in a 4x4 pad because kids playing foursquare. That's what I was trying to say. Didn't play well with the basketball players. So anyways, again, an unauthorized physical improvement on the lands that we needed to bring before the board, hopefully for a after-the-fact approval. And then lastly, there's a structure here, which is the manual arts building. Looks like a woodshed or something like that. They do have a storage facility here in the approximate location, but other than that, there are a number of very small property buildings. This particular plan in 97 actually shows a new pavilion, and they actually do have a structure approximately in that same point. So as far as consistencies, or to answer Annie's question more specifically, I think we're basically talking about the foursquare pad, these particular buildings on the edge of the playground at this particular location, the lean-to, as it's called out on the far south end, as well as the sheep building. And did I lose the chicken coop? And then, of course, the structures adjacent to the kindergarten, we can't find any evidence of permits being issued for them.
Roughly how many square feet they're proposing to add to the building? Like, or a percentage roughly of?
Mark, you caught me off guard on that particular answer. I don't know if that is readily discerned from the application materials. I don't happen to have a copy of that right with me, Annie.
It's not a big deal, I was just kind of curious. So the clearing limits that you have there, the one question I have is that, throw this out there, but access for the fire department to this building.
This is a conundrum that still intrigues me to this day. The fire access is actually on the east side of the building. So the fire department basically required a certain width, a certain amount of stabilized surface to access the structure. And it has always been that it is on that east side that is the means of access. We basically showed an extension of basically the driveway to be able to access the relocated shed, and out of all that, something that just seemed to make sense as far as both areas that you'd need for just literally constructing the facility, but at the same time to basically facilitate circulation around that particular end of the building. So that being said, in a perfect world, the fire department, I'd say, well, why don't we just complete this all the way around? That may be a discussion that we still hear from the fire chief, but that being said, this had always been the historical aspect, but we did want to basically provide at least a stable surface around the perimeter without extending significantly outside of the original limits to facilitate a practical use of the land.
I think a big factor for them too would be whether or not the building has sprinklers. I don't know if it does.
It will. Actually, it will.
It's gonna be-
Yes, it will be sprinklered.
It's pretty big. There's an 8-inch water service there.
Well, anytime you have a gathering of people, the code is changed to the point where it's pretty strict.
Pretty tough knot.
That is correct.
Um,
So the good news on the sprinkler end is that there's an existing 8-inch water main that comes in all the way to the building today.
Which way does the water generally move across these? It's tough to see the contour.
Straight down.
The numbers on the contour lines.
It's either straight down or straight up. It doesn't go north, east, or west. It doesn't drain very well. Generally, that's a smart Alice remark, but there is very subtle drainage that runs through a ditch that ultimately out here, and then it runs further to the south and ultimately out to the La Platte. No, La Platte? No. McCabe's Brook. Yes.
It is awfully flat out there.
Yes.
So this demarcation that goes around, the yellow demarcation, that is an Act 250?
Well, both, it was the original local approval as well as the Act 250 approval. And ultimately, there was on the local level hey, let's do a redo of the master plan. So that's at least my understanding of what superseded the original plan for the project.
Annie, how do you feel about the mixed-use PUD? Is that something you'd want to go back and take a look at a little closer, or?
It does require, contain both residential and non-residential uses in the definition of it, so I don't know whether somebody lives there, whether it actually gets built, that, that's sort of more back to you guys. I think it would give some more flexibility, basically allow them to not remove some of the accessory structures. around the kindergarten area. I'm still a little concerned about the parking. I don't really know how to handle that. The waiver was granted as part of that approval. It's not something that you can do now. I don't know if it exists. It would still be within the buffer, so it wouldn't make the lot totally conforming.
So would that be considered, I'm sorry, Annie, I was rude to interrupt.
That's
Nonetheless, I didn't know if that would be considered to be a pre-existing condition similar to the fact that when we create PUDs in residential districts, we're allowed to recognize buildings, existing buildings within the perimeter, and don't ask the applicants to remove them. That being said, does this particular PUD enable a structure, whether it be a physical building or some assembly of man-made features, to be recognized as an existing condition? That we're not making things any worse than they are today.
I don't know if that language is in that section or not.
Okay.
I don't know if it would need to be, but it was approved as is. So it's not something
Right.
that can be taken back.
Good question.
I don't
Can-
know how changing that approval to a mixed-use PUD affects that. I have to think on that a little.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, I don't think it's as crucial that that language is in there because that did receive the waiver and approval.
Well, to give David some indication of the temperature of the board and how other board members feel about that, perhaps if there is a residential component requirement to this, if there was something added to the plan that represented a residential aspect to this thing, would that be acceptable?
Beyond animals. Okay.
Yeah, caretaker's cottage or something.
Sure. There we go.
Okay. I think it's pretty hard to capture when you're going down through the list of conditional uses. You'll never capture them all. And I've been thinking about the Waldorf School when they were developing those.
No, as you can see, it just kind of sits out by itself, and
Yeah.
I can see how somebody just.
We looked at them actually moving it up to the Morgan Horse Farm at one point.
Well, the high school component. High school is currently in Charlotte, and they would like to relocate to the Morgan Horse building.
Still in the-
Still in the works, but Annie's right on top of that one, from what I understand.
I don't believe that one's coming through here.
Oh,
Site,
okay.
just a few site plan. We'll see.
I have a question. The plot on the ground,
Mhm.
the yellow lines you said are the Act 250 boundaries. Is that also the property boundary?
No. What we were trying to do is identify what was originally approved as far as the limits of disturbance.
Okay, that's,
So that was,
Got it.
so what we're trying to do is, okay, what is the footprint in which we can basically remove trees, do earth grading, things of that nature, and just superimpose that here.
there's no setback requirements, are there, from the area of disturbance?
No, not that I understand.
For future discussions, some of the numbers I'd like to see is, the percentage of the land that's, of their parcel of land that's, developed or not wooded or has been disturbed versus, what they're over. It's a pretty big parcel of property.
I mean, we can give you two numbers. I think ultimately this supersedes this one. I'm still very happy to give you those comparison numbers, but even this one with the track and the soccer field would represent a original approval or a 97 updated approval that still is in far excess of what we've got here today. But that would be, again, just for good background information,
Yeah,
better understanding of where we.
Buildings, parking lot, parking surfaces.
That's fair.
Are you asking for an existing condition percentage, like a lot coverage?
Yes,
Okay.
and it looks like most of it's pretty wooded. I think it's wooded.
Yes. Once you get beyond the footprint of the site, it's all woods. Until you get to the river.
Dave, can I ask you a question about the parking lot? It's kind of a free-for-all when it comes to parking there. Does that lot fill up when they are special events?
I don't know if I have that answer for you. I don't know personally, but I can find that out for you, Bill. As far as, again, capacity, I've never heard of issues with parking having to extend out onto the municipal property, but I don't have enough. I've never asked that question. They've never come back and, they have not come back and said, oh, we have a significant issue when we have events, we need more parking. That hasn't come yet, or has not become an issue, at least as far as their goals to make improvements.
Where I'm headed with this is that, the parking area that we've got is pretty substantially different from what the 97 approval was.
Yes.
And while this addition may not warrant making major changes, but, at some point, it would be nice to tailor that parking to be a little bit more standard.
Certainly, so that it's a little bit easier to understand where you're supposed to park. Yes. Yes. I think that's a fair point.
Yeah, it's two things that come to mind is one's just, adequate circulation, and then getting, fire personnel in and out of there, because I imagine if that place fills up, it's a free-for-all. I have been down there once to an event, and it was pretty full. It was quite some time ago, but I wouldn't mind seeing something to try to make it a little more formalized.
Good.
And what's the purpose of this addition going to be?
Well, right now, when they have events, it is, you have to make sure you get there early. Otherwise, you're in the hallway. They also would like, there are some other secondary uses as far as bleachers and things of that nature that would be able to fit in this particular building that they have no room for today. So I think it's just is to create an auditorium or at least a seating capacity that is more consistent with the amount of students that they have to basically just catch up with what other schools typically would have.
That's something I'd also like to see outlined would be a head count, student head count, and staff head count, just to kind of look at the parking requirements.
I think my understanding is that the facility does have certain permitted both student and staff totals, which should be able to come back and reconcile with what the parking obligations would be under different scenarios. Obviously, day-to-day operation with pickup and drop-off and parking for teachers is one thing, but I think what I'm hearing is when we have activities in which we basically have parents all converging into this particular location, making sure that we have appropriate infrastructure for that.
So you're talking about Department of Fire Safety occupancy load permits, is that what you think? Is that what you're talking about?
There's two different ways of getting at it. Obviously, as far as a student count, if you have one car for every student for an event where the parents are coming and attending, that's one way of getting at it. The other thing is to work backwards, reverse engineer what you're authorized to have as far as an occupancy load inside the auditorium and apply that to your parking facility.
To me, that's kind of an important analysis because those guys at Fire Safety in Williston, they're going to come up for access to fire equipment, not that much. As long as you have adequate handicap parking, and that's it. That's all they care about.
That's a fair representation.
Pretty much it. So it'd be nice to take those two items and
Mesh them together.
collide.
Yep, that's fair.
Mesh together. Looks like there's a fair amount of real estate there. And, I have been there a few times. And drop people off, it gets pretty crowded down there. Granted, you know, every high school parking lot is pretty darn full. Stuff goes on, but for day-to-day stuff, activities, I think we should make sure they've got enough there.
Good.
Any questions from the board?
I have one comment. That language pertaining to the existing structure, the permitted buffer does exist for the mixed-use PUD in a residential district. So it's gravel parking, right? It's not paved.
That is correct.
So I don't know if it's considered a structure, but I would think that would fall within that. So if you were to be classified as a mixed-use PUD, I think that would allow that to.
Quite often, I mean, typically a parking lot's considered a structure, whether it's paved or unpaved.
Well, if it is, then it is. It's not, it's less than a structure, so it should be okay.
Got it.
Yeah, that's a tough definition.
Yeah, yes.
Depends on who you ask. You ask a civil engineer or a structural engineer. Okay.
Did you want to talk about the conditional use at all? Is that something?
So let's talk about if we go down the mixed-use path in which we have the perimeter modified, it still is a conditional use within the mixed-use district. You still need a conditional use approval for this particular type of use.
To bring it into more
Yes.
conformity, a school is a
Nope.
conditional use in a
Right.
residential district, so I think just
Oh,
to
okay.
make it cleaner, you could either apply as, whether you do the mixed-use PUD road or not,
Is
applying
irrespective.
for the school, or applying under multiple uses for the school and an accessory use. But either way,
No, it sounds like that if this is a conditional use within the residential district, we have to get an approval for any modification to this.
You're
Yeah.
expanding
Yes,
a
a non-conforming use, absolutely. We need to make
for a
this,
conditional use.
you know, we need to acquire a conditional use approval from the board to enable this to occur. So that's the standard that is before the applicant.
As far as future iterations of this or modifications, would it be beneficial to maybe consider doing building envelope, square footage based stuff? Is that, is it really just the addition that you're looking to do?
My crystal ball is not that clear. I really don't, I mean, it's a process that has occurred through spurts. I think through the middle 90s, we saw a lot of additions up until about 99 when the kindergarten was added, and then not much after that. And it wasn't until there was a donor that indicated that they were willing to assist the school in, you know, providing an appropriate auditorium facility that this became a viable option for them. So that being said, this is the location that basically is augmenting the facility that they have today, and out of all that, from a school planning standpoint, seemed to make most sense for that particular component, being part of a protected aspect of the existing structure. But so as far as, i.e., are we creating a master plan, or would we be willing to identify a building envelope in which either primary structures or accessory structures, there might actually be two, could occur? We can think about that one. I think as more of the resource mapping comes forward, we'll be able to certainly look at that in more detail or with additional information to be able to make some better decisions on where things should go, can go, would go in support of that.
Just in retrospect, if that had been done, kind of as Paul was saying earlier, then we would be having this conversation.
Good point. Yes. So what Andy's really getting at is that if you have a building envelope, then it becomes pretty much more a site plan, or is it even just a administrative type of thing?
I guess it would probably, it could be an administrative site plan if it was written, if the PUD approval was written as such.
Correct. Yeah, I think you've hit it on the head there. And I'm not sure if the board's willing to go there. I mean, the applicant's not pushing that, but those are, tools in the toolbox to be thinking about moving forward.
Any other questions? I don't think there's anybody here from the public to ask any questions, are there, sir? Okay. So, we don't really approve or deny a sketch plan approval. Pretty much just take the temperature of the board. I think I would take Annie's well, I'll let the board make that comment. Whether or not we grant them permission to go to preliminary or
Sounds like we were,
just continue with the sketch. I think we need, my personal opinion, I think we need to just continue with the sketch. Iron some things out and take another look at it.
the idea of it being mixed use, caretaker's place somewhere on there.
I think there's some things to iron out at sketch here.
All right. Could we ask that if we were to hustle on our end, that we could chew up a little bit of your time on the 18th? It looks like everybody else wants to do the same thing.
I let Annie set the agenda, so.
The challenge is that your next available meeting after that is not till the middle of January. So it does, with the recognition that we will be a three-step process, that with them attempting to start construction during the summer recess, we just want to make sure we don't lose sight of ultimately the big picture goal there.
I think, David, if we could get the thing squared in, what do you have on the agenda, Annie?
There's 4 or 5 other items. 2 may go away. There's several items that just, I don't know how long it will take.
I think here, what I would envision as far as information that we'd come back with would be, as Annie requested, a blow-by-blow of each structure, accessory structure that doesn't have a permit, as far as at least completing the application information in that particular regard. Asking Annie just to proof the mixed-use option to make sure that we haven't missed anything there. Come back with a conceptual tenant's home or a building, a residential building, footprint on the site, and out of all that, the information that the chair asked in regard to reconciling, what we're looking at in regards to use and infrastructure to support it, and that will give us guidance as far as how much work we're looking at as far as the character work, I should say, at the preliminary plat level.
You can have that by the 18th or in advance of.
Well, we have to do it really quickly because Annie's going to need to prepare a staff report. So that being said, we need to be getting it to her by Monday or Tuesday. How late would that be, Annie?
You can do it Tuesday or Wednesday. I think
Okay.
it'll be okay. I won't be here on
Monday
Monday.
it will not be, but anyways, I think if we can meet that schedule, then we'd like to just get that 15 minutes of update time with you to bring you up to speed on everything here. And then again, if we do our job and get it to Annie, then it'll be in the staff report. Hopefully you will have a chance to review it, absorb it, and then it won't be quite as much time at this level on the 18th.
Okay with that.
Sounds good.
Okay, so I would move then that we continue this sketch plan application to December 18th.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, so we've got some minutes to approve. We've got two shots.
Mark, are you not going to do a motion on Shelburne Green?
Oh, I'm sorry.
They actually asked.
Jeez, I skipped right over that. You should have kicked me in the ankles, Annie.
Well, we just started talking about it.
It's rambling on. Okay,
And I was
application.
confused because Dave was standing up there. So I thought-
Right.
My fault.
Had momentum
Yeah,
going.
yeah. Fooled us. Oh, so anyways, item number 8 on the agenda, application SUV 1302. An application by Shelburne Green LLC for preliminary plan approval for a commercial PUD at 6221 Shelburne Road. They have asked at the last minute for a continuance until,
They specifically requested to be continued to the 15th of January
to the January 15th meeting,
due to zoning changes that they are in the process of.
based on some pending zoning changes. So, would anybody like to make a motion to approve that continuance?
I'll move to continue application SUV 13-02 to January 15th.
Okay, second? Favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Were you here for, the application or anything? Could we proceed with them?
Yeah.
Okay.
The next item on our agenda is item 10, approval of the minutes. Firstly, the minutes of November 6th, 2013. Anybody has any comments or edits that they would like to bring forth? Please do. I am okay with it.
Good to me.
Fine job. So, would anybody like to make a motion to approve these minutes of November 6th?
Approve the minutes.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Next is November 20th. There's one thing I noticed. So, has anybody got any issues with these minutes, November 20th? I'm fine with them.
Look good?
Motion approved.
Second?
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
So the next item would be to move these findings. Who's here? We have two draft decisions. One would be for the site plan review for coastal development for the bingo facility at Tennybrook Square. You folks received these in your documents and online. Does anybody have anything they would like to discuss or bring up regarding this decision Amy drafted?
That's what I can tell you.
The only thing I saw in here is there's a typo, the shopping center.
Oh, yeah. Good grab.
There's one other one I saw when I looked at online, but I couldn't mark it. Did you know that, Andy, that in item 11, you've got this as a shopping center? CHOPPING.
Oh, what page is that on?
It's page 2, actually.
Shopping center?
That's okay.
Ask for feedback. I'll leave,
So, we need to vote on this as far as approving or denying it, because, as you know, we decided to instruct Annie to draft these, and then we would actually officially vote to approve or deny at this point in the process, so.
I'll make a motion to approve,
Motion's been made to, okay, yeah, I guess we do have to make a motion, do we, Ann? I never said that, did we?
Usually you just sign them and
Yeah,
they don't get you
well,
to
we
sign.
decided, you might not have been around for those discussions, but we decided that we were gonna actually record at this point who votes on it, to approve or deny. So, at any rate, all those in favor of approving this application?
Aye.
aye.
Anybody opposed?
Okay, so that's a motion by Bill, who seconded that?
I'll second it, how's that?
Okay, so you approve, and that was what, SP what?
SP 93-7R3.
7R3.
I think that technically is the way it.
Do we need to write them that way? I guess,
Mark, should I say the findings of fact and notice of decision? Is that what you're approving?
that's what we're approving.
Okay, so why don't should I say in the motion to approve SP 93-7R3,
Findings of fact and notice of decision.
Okay,
That's essentially what we're doing.
as written, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I can double check that. I don't know how it is code or if it is different.
Okay. So at any rate, I'm going to sign this based on that voting then. And,
The other one is just design review, so we already voted.
yeah, we've already voted on this one, so I guess that's it.
And so is it the design review from tonight?
Yes.
That's the second one that you signed? Okay.
Yes. Chair Beal, commandeer. Is there anything anybody else would like to bring up for discussion? Other than that, entertain a motion to adjourn. Move to adjourn. Second?
Second?
Second.
Favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We're out.